I revealed to my dad his wife the real reason why me and him were never close. My dad gave me to his sister the day I was born. My mom died having me. My aunt told me years later he blamed me for it and couldn't handle looking at me. Growing up, I'd see him at Christmas or Thanksgiving and he'd walk right past me like I didn't exist. When I got older, around 12 or 13, he started saying it out loud. "You killed her." He'd tell me at family dinners when nobody was listening. "I can't even look at your face without seeing what you took from me." I went to therapy 3 times a week in middle school. I used to pray at church every Sunday crying, asking God if I was going to hell for killing my mom. That's how messed up his words made me. But I kept trying anyway. I kept thinking maybe one day he'd change his mind about me. After I graduated high school, he told me straight up to never contact him again. He said he had no legal obligation to me anymore since he'd been sending my aunt money. All those years, and now that was done. That's when I finally stopped trying. We went our separate ways. My aunt never mentions him. My grandparents do sometimes, and that's how I found out he got married 2 years ago. They were upset he didn't invite me to the wedding, but honestly, I didn't care. We weren't close. We were nothing. Then last month, his wife reached out through my grandma. She wanted to meet me. Apparently, she'd been asking about me for months, and he finally caved. He called me for the first time in 9 years. He said she really wanted me in their lives and asked if we could meet at their house. Then he said something that made my blood boil. "Don't tell her the real reason we don't talk, please. She thinks we just didn't get along when you were a teenager and lost touch. After you went to college." I didn't agree to anything, but he kept pushing. He said this could be our chance to reconcile, that his wife was really excited to meet me, and maybe we could start over. But I knew the truth. He was only doing this for her, not for me. Never for me. I showed up at their house on a Saturday afternoon. She opened the door with this huge smile, introduced herself as Nicole, and hugged me like we were already family. My dad stood in the hallway looking uncomfortable. She made coffee and brought out cookies she'd baked that morning. She kept talking about how happy she was to finally meet me. How she'd been telling my dad for over a year that family was important. Then she asked the question, "So, what happened with you two? Your dad said you guys just grew apart." She was looking at me with these kind eyes like she genuinely cared. My dad was staring at his coffee cup, his jaw tight. I looked at him for a second. He wouldn't even make eye contact. So, I told her everything. I told her my mom died giving birth to me. I told her my dad gave me to his sister, and I grew up in her house, not his. I told her about the family events where he ignored me. The things he said when I got older about me killing my mom. I told her about the therapy. The crying at church, the years of trying to get him to love me. I told her about graduation day when he told me to never bother him again. Nicole's face went completely white. She put her coffee down and looked at my dad. "Is this true?" He didn't answer. She asked again, louder, "Is this true?" He finally nodded. She stood up and walked out of the room. I heard a door slam upstairs. My dad looked at me with pure rage. "You just ruined everything. She's been the only good thing in my life since your mother died and you just destroyed it." I stood up and headed for the door. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed me for 27 years. I left. 2 days later, my grandma called. She said Nicole had called her crying, asking if what I said was true. My grandma confirmed it all. After that call from grandma, I didn't hear from my dad, not a word. For a few days, I almost hoped he'd try to reach out. Maybe beg me to forgive him or explain himself. But he didn't. Silence, and honestly, I didn't miss it. The anger, the hurt, the years of rejection, it didn't disappear overnight. But at least now it had space to breathe without him making it worse. Nicole didn't reach out either. I expected her to be furious with me, to think I was overstepping. But grandma said she was broken. She had been telling my dad for months that it was important to reconcile with me. And now she knew the truth. The look on her face when I told her it stayed with me. That combination of shock, disbelief, and then sorrow. I could picture it perfectly. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Nicole. I need to talk to you, please. Can we meet? I don't want to lose you over his mistakes. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, to never let her back into my life. Another part, the part that had craved a family my whole life, wanted to go. I replied, "Fine. But we meet in a public place. I'm not going to your house." We met at a small cafe in town, nothing fancy. She arrived, looking nervous and sad, holding to coffees like she thought it might soften the tension. I sat across from her, arms crossed, waiting. She took a deep breath before speaking. I had no idea. I didn't know how bad things were. I've been trying for over a year to get him to let me be part of your life. And I thought, maybe if we start fresh, you and I could have a relationship. But I didn't know. I wanted to shout at her. How could she not know? He made it his mission to erase me. But I stayed quiet, sipping the coffee I hadn't wanted but was too polite to refuse. So, what now? I asked finally. Nicole looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. I don't know. I can't change what he did. I can't change the past. But I can try to be here for you if you'll let me. I laughed, bitter. Why should I let you? You're just married to him. You were part of this too, whether you meant to be or not. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. I can't take back any of it. But I can be honest with you. I can tell you the truth. Even if it hurts him. Even if it hurts me. Her words made me pause. Honesty. Something I'd been starved of my entire life from him. Maybe she was different. We sat there for hours. I told her more things I'd never said to anyone. How it felt to be invisible to my father. How I spent Christmases wishing I could just be wanted. How I believed for years that I was a cause of my mother's death. She listened. Not once did she interrupt or try to defend him. She just listened, and when I was done, she said, "You didn't deserve any of that. And you don't have to carry it anymore." For the first time in my life, someone outside of therapy, someone outside of my aunt and grandma, said I hadn't deserved it. My chest tightened with relief and fear all at once. A few days later, I found myself thinking about her a lot. About how maybe there was a version of family I could have, a real family. One that didn't hinge on his anger or resentment. I knew reconnecting with her didn't mean I had to forgive him. Didn't mean I had to invite him back into my life. But I wanted something. Then came the day I saw my dad again. He showed up at Grandma's, claiming he wanted to apologize, that he wanted a chance to fix things. He looked older, thinner, like the anger and bitterness had been eating him alive for decades. But his eyes cold, calculating, waiting for me to cave. I didn't even let him speak. I turned to Nicole, who had come with him, and I saw the hesitation in her face. She wanted to defend him, I think. But even she knew he'd gone too far. I'm done, I said. I'm done waiting for you to love me or want me. You made your choice decades ago. And I've made mine. You're not part of my life anymore, he sputtered. Emma, please. I was wrong. You weren't wrong. You were cruel, I interrupted. There's a difference. And I'm not letting you gaslight me anymore. Nicole didn't say a word. She just reached over and squeezed my hand. In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time, I felt a sense of ownership over my own life, my own family. I had chosen it. Over the next few months, Nicole and I built something tentative but real. We met for coffee regularly, went to movies, talked about life, laughed a little. She shared stories about her life with my dad before I existed. Her hopes for a family that I could be a part of, and gradually, I started letting her in. One day, she asked me if I wanted to meet her parents. I hesitated, thinking about the long road, the years of neglect and pain. And then I realized I was ready. Not for him, not for my dad, but for the chance at a family I chose. Yes, I said. I liked that, and for the first time, I felt like the future didn't have to include the man who had made me feel unwanted. I could create my own family, my own memories, ones filled with acceptance, love, and honesty. Not perfect, not without pain, but mine. I finally understood something my aunt had tried to tell me for years. It's not about blood or obligation, it's about who chooses to be in your life and how. And I was done letting anyone take that choice away from me. Over time, Nicole and I even started talking about a shared project helping kids who had grown up feeling unwanted, neglected, or blamed for things beyond their control. We didn't need my dad to make it right. We could do it ourselves. We wanted to give them what I hadn't had: understanding, support, and a sense of belonging. It wasn't easy. Some days the anger bubbled up. Some nights I'd wake remembering his words, feeling small, feeling unloved. But then I'd remember the small cafe, her hands in mine, her promise of honesty, and I'd feel the first real sense of home I'd ever known. I didn't forgive him. I didn't have to. But I forgave myself for needing family, for wanting love, and for refusing to let his bitterness dictate the rest of my life. And maybe one day, when I was ready, I'd see him again. But for now, I was choosing me, and that, at last, felt like a victory worth celebrating. Story 2. After 10 years of building my wife's dad's $100 million company, my wife's sister became CEO and fired me just to please her boyfriend. I barely managed to keep from laughing. Tomorrow was going to be fun. Chapter 1. The firing tenures. That's how long I gave to the Delgado family's company. I started in a dusty backroom office with 2 interns and a laptop, managing supply chains, logistics, closing B2B deals, you name it. I worked late nights while my wife Alina begged me to slow down. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, even my father's funeral, just to be the right hand to her father, Emilio Delgado. He called me son, said I was the future of the company, said he trusted me more than his own blood. Too bad he didn't put that in writing. 2 months ago, he retired. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer, quiet exit, private treatment abroad. And with no sons to pass the empire to, he handed the reins to his oldest daughter, Celeste, my sister-in-law, a woman with sharp heels, a sharper tongue, and a boyfriend who thought he was a second coming of Elon Musk. Because he once flipped a crypto coin, the writing was on the wall from day one. She stopped inviting me to meetings. She reassigned my team, started copying her boyfriend Travis on emails I used to be CC'd on. Still, I stayed quiet. I watched, I documented, and then it happened. During the quarterly board meeting, where I was scheduled to present a projected $12 million expansion proposal, Celeste walked in smirking like she already won. We're going in a different direction, she said, interrupting me mid-slide. A younger, more innovative vision. Then she looked at Travis, who wore a smug designer suit and that smug designer smirk. You've done enough, brother-in-law. We won't be needing your services anymore. Laughter from a few of the sycophants on the board. Even Alina just stared at her lap. I looked around the room, silent, calm. Then I smiled. I understood, I said simply. I'll clear my office tonight. Celeste raised an eyebrow. You don't seem upset. Oh? I'm not, I replied, standing. In fact, tomorrow's going to be fascinating. Because what Celeste didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had quietly spent the last 2 years preparing for this exact moment. And when the truth came out tomorrow, their empire was going to fall hard. Chapter 2, the ownership clause. They forgot I had back at my office while the others were celebrating my exit over priced champagne. I locked the door, shut the blinds, and pulled out a single-page contract I kept stashed in a private drawer. A dead one to be signed by Olio Delgado himself 6 years ago during a late-night negotiation in his study. Right after I helped him save the company from a $28 million lawsuit that could have wiped them out. For your loyalty, he had said, glass of bourbon in hand. You'll get this. It was simple, effective immediately. 15% of all intellectual property, licensing, and digital infrastructure developed under my name shall be jointly owned between the company and me. In the event of a leadership change, this agreement remains binding. Guess who built the company's software platform from scratch? Guess who filed the back-end server patents in his name and licensed them to the company? Guess who wrote the proprietary logistics algorithm that saved them tens of millions in annual costs? Me. And they thought they could fire me without consequences. This wasn't a resignation. It was a trap. That night, I remotely revoked every license key from my private server. Customer support dashboards, offline warehouse logistics software crippled. The e-commerce backbone dead. I knew they'd call it first, they'd blame a glitch, try rebooting the servers. But they wouldn't find anything because the real code lived with me, and it always had. At 8:03 a.m. the next morning, Celeste called. Her voice was high-pitched and furious. What did you do? The entire backend is down. Orders are failing. Fulfillment is stalled. I cut her off calmly. I suggest you refer to a debt of $12 billion of the private agreement signed by your father. It's legally filed. I own part of the IP, and you breached our agreement the moment you terminated me without cause. Silence, then you're bluffing. I laughed softly. Celeste, go check your email, and Travis should probably sit down before reading his, because the next wave was personal. Chapter 3, the Travis revelation. Celeste thought she had traded up. Her new strategic advisor, Travis, was a slick-talking Ivy League MBA with a toothy grin and a LinkedIn profile filled with buzzwords. He wore flashy suits, talked about synergies, and bragged about crypto gains at every board meeting. But behind the facade, he was a con artist with a sealed record in Nevada, a trail of failed startups, and to pending lawsuits involving misappropriation of investor funds. I knew because I hired a pie 6 months ago when I first noticed him hovering around the office, whispering into Celeste's ear during board meetings. He wasn't a threat then, but he was a cockroach, and I always track cockroaches. So before I walked out of that building, I prepared a little parting gift. At 9 a.m., just as Celeste was trying to spin the system shut down as a scheduled software audit, an anonymous email hit every major shareholder's inbox. Subject line: before you let Travis touch your money, you might want to see this. Attached a 63-page PDF compiled by my pie. Screenshots of his shell company bank transfers. Documents showing how he'd once embezzled $180, zero from a previous employer, and fled before charges could be filed. But the cherry on top, a recorded phone call where Travis casually told a friend, dude, once I'm in with the Delgado family, I'll drain that company dry. And he meant it. By noon, the board was in chaos. Share prices began to dip. Vendors started pulling out. And Celeste, she tried to deny it until Travis disappeared. Phone off. Apartment cleared out. Gone. The man she fired me for had just ghosted her, leaving her holding the grenade. She tried calling me 8 times. I didn't answer. Then she called her father. Chapter 4: The Father's Return. By 5 p.m., the emergency board meeting was called. Not via email, not by Celeste, but by Don Alberto Delgado himself, my former father-in-law. The man who once smirked at me like I was a disposable napkin at his daughter's wedding. He'd been retired for 2 years enjoying yachts and cigars in Monaco. But when news of Travis's con and the digital lockdown hit, the man returned like a king summoned by thunder. He walked into the conference room like a ghost resurrected. Everyone stood, even Celeste, his voice, always controlled and terrifyingly calm, cut through the silence like a guillotine. "Where is he?" Celeste swallowed. "Travis vanished, and the man you fired, the one who ran this company for a decade. Where is he?" "Trying to ruin us," she muttered. Don Alberto turned to the room, slowly scanning each face. "Number. He warned you. You spat on his loyalty. You laughed in his face. And now he's the only one who knew how to keep this place alive." Then he sat down. Looked directly at her. "Fix it, call him. Beg if you have to." She didn't even argue. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a whiskey in hand when the call came. It wasn't Celeste this time. It was Don Alberto. He didn't waste time with apologies. "You still have the recovery protocols, don't you?" "I do. We need you back." I sipped my drink, staring at the skyline I helped build. "I'm not coming back as an employee," I said. "I come back on my terms as CEO. Full control. You and Celeste step aside, silence, then deal." The next morning, I walked into the boardroom in a custom navy suit. Not as their errand boy, not as their family puppet, but as the man who rebuilt their empire and was now ready to reshape it in my image, Celeste. She couldn't even look me in the eye. Her father. He gave me a single nod, and me? I gave my first order. Our first initiative, ethical restructuring. And by the way, Travis's office, turn it into a janitor's closet seems more fitting. The board chuckled, but deep down they all knew the king was back. Chapter 5: The Golden Exit. I didn't come back to stay. No. I came back to take everything I earned. Expose everything they buried and leave them with nothing but regret. Within weeks of my return as CEO, I cleaned up the chaos, revoked every shady deal Celeste had greenlit, purged Travis's cronies from the company, and restored confidence in the board, the investors, and the market. But behind the scenes, I was quietly preparing my exit because, unlike them, I didn't need power to feel important. I had already won. 2 months later, I called for one final board meeting. This time, Celeste sat at the far end, silent, small, and stripped of any authority. Alberto watched me closely like he already suspected something. "I'm stepping down," I said. Gasps around the table. "But before I go, I'm activating the final clause of my contract." I continue calmly handing over the documents. A buyout, thanks to the IP I co-owned, the restructuring value I created, and the share options I negotiated on return. The company now owed me $38 million in cash. Not stock. It would leave their accounts bleeding, and I didn't care. This was my final invoice. Payment for 10 years of backstabbing, betrayal, and humiliation. Celeste's jaw dropped. Alberto didn't speak. He just leaned back, face pale, fingers steepled. They knew they couldn't stop it because they signed the contract. They let me back in, and I made sure every dotted line led to this moment. As I left the building for the last time, I paused in the lobby. Celeste came running after me.